Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy, you could never unlock my secret. Oh no! Suddenly, no, leave me! Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat, where we try to have good conversations with interesting people. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Erin. Erin has a YouTube channel called Far From Eden. I'm always saying East of Eden. Like, I don't know why my brain goes there, but I know it's Far From Eden. Yeah, and you are kind of a rare bird. I mean, I know some of those rare birds, but you're one of the rare birds that actually supports MGTOW. Yes. And you're obviously very critical of modernity and feminism and all of that. So welcome to the show, Erin. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and apparently we have some crossover in our in our audiences. So we have some people that watch us that also are subscribed to you. Yes. So, and they may be familiar with you. And also you talked recently to someone who's an old friend of the channel, Paul Elam. If you remember correctly, of A Voice for Men, now of XY Crew.
Yes.
So yeah, it's good to have you. So I'm noticing more and more people are talking about these things, but they're not quite as far along on this path as you are, I don't think. So why don't you start by telling me how you got involved with this creating content?
Well, I was friends with a man, and I just met him, as you do in life, meet a person, get to talking with them. And he said something about he had been married before, etc. And he went to his church, friends, and he was trying to express to them that she was abusive. And they told him, a man can't be abused. And when he told me that, I was just, it hit me. I think people who get red-pilled, everybody gets red-pilled a different way. And this was the thing that broke the brainwashing. And I suddenly could see through it. And I started to see not just that, but my life in retrospect. So I saw my parents' marriage and my whole growing up, and the way my mother treated my father and that whole dynamic. And suddenly I had a deeper understanding for what he had been through and what that experience must have been like for him. And then I could just see more clearly, and nothing I ever, and I was encouraged by others to watch The Red Pill by Cassie J. I started learning about MGTOW, and at first I thought, oh, and I'm so embarrassed to admit that I had this opinion at one time, but I thought, oh, that's just the other side of feminism. That's just the opposite of feminism. They just hate women. And like I said, I'm so embarrassed of that, because obviously I was completely wrong, because that is not what MGTOW is at all. But that is what I call the overlords would have you believe it is, because then they can just make it an evil hate group rather than listening to what it is. And I think the reason they don't listen to what it is because then they'd have to criticize women, and we're not allowed to do that. So that was the beginning of my journey, and that was about 9 years ago. And it just hasn't stopped. So that's how I became pro.
Yeah. So you said that you heard this this anecdote about a friend of yours who was a man who was experiencing abuse. So like, have you ever heard anything like that before? Because this was the thing that sort of clicked. So what do you think, like, for example,
Mhm.
I don't want to assume your age, but were you alive or around when Lorena Bobbitt
Yes.
cut off her man's penis?
Yes, I
So
was.
did you then? What did you think that that was absolutely monstrous? Or and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think
No,
that
that's fine. I don't care at
yeah,
all.
yeah, it's
Go ahead.
okay. So what did you like? What like things like that when you hear about henpeck husbands or husbands that like this sort of joke about women
Right.
beating their husbands with rolling pins and things like that. What did you think of that before you got red pilled?
That's a fantastic question. I really hadn't remembered Lorena Bobbitt in forever, but that's a really good one to think of because there were so many jokes at the time and people laughing about this that like it was funny. And I don't think I was, and I would tell you if I was. Like I'm an open book. For
Hmm.
example, I will be the first to be like, I voted for Obama 2 times. You know what I mean? And so
So did
I,
I. So
I
it's
admit
okay.
that. So like you can admit, like, all right, I used to be really blue pilled with everything. But anyway, yeah, I didn't laugh about it. I didn't make jokes about it. But I did not understand, which is so pathetic, how horrific it was. And the thing is like if a woman had been maimed, everybody would have reacted
Oh
completely
yeah, you'd have
differently.
to wear a ribbon and
Oh
like
my
like it'd make it into a holiday and they'd raise
Right,
billions of
right,
dollars. Yeah.
right. There would have been marches and everything, and that was not what it was like then. God,
Yeah, that's the
what?
thing. Like, because what I'm wondering about is, we see this. It's sort of like a casual misandry, and it's
Yes,
so ubiquitous that most people they normalize it in their mind, and they don't really make a big deal of it. Which is why I don't really blame people when they come around, and I'm like, well, look, it was so common that we didn't really think about it.
yes,
But there, for whatever reason, maybe your head was in the right space at the time you heard this, and that's what changed for you. So,
yeah.
like, how did you learn about Cassie J's documentary? Because like we were very involved with helping her, get it out, and I didn't
Same,
think that a
same
lot of
man,
people got to see it. So,
same man, same man
hmm?
told me
Ah,
because
okay.
because it was such a breakthrough. He was like, "Okay, you need to watch the red pill," and I was like, "Well, what's the red pill?" And he's like, "Just watch it." So I did. But I will answer your question. Why then was it able to permeate the propaganda and that I'd been brainwashed with? And this is brutal, but because my mom had died,
Mm.
and there I will refer back, and this is not I don't identify with this directly, but there was a former child actress, I can never remember her name, but she wrote a book called I'm Glad My Mom Died.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know her name, but she was on Nickelodeon
Yes,
and she was on a show called iCarly.
that's right. Right.
Yes, and I can't remember her name. I bet somebody in the chat knows
I can see her
if you're
face.
younger.
Right. And she said, I'm glad my mom died. That was the name of her book. And it sounds awful, but yeah, I think that was one of the things that I love my mom dearly. I do. However, I know who she is. I know how she raised me and I know how she treated my father. You know what I mean?
So the actress her name is Jeanette McCurdy
Okay.
or Janet McCurdy. It's either Janet McCurdy or
I know
Jeanette
the
McCurdy.
last name. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
that is kind of the thing. Like, I think that must have put a crack in it. And then I heard that and it just, you know, because here's
yeah.
the thing. I think when the parent that kind of held up these falsehoods and this idea that you don't want to challenge, um, when that parent dies, suddenly there's something in you that's allowed to think differently. And it wasn't even a conscious thing for me, but it started to happen. So I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah, I
why
can see
I was
that.
able to wake up. So,
Yeah. We talk a lot in our sort of like mainstream discourse about people with daddy issues or father abuse, things like that. But we don't really talk a lot about mommy issues. I mean, they exist, but usually when we do talk about it, it's referring to men. Men maybe that are like, failure to launch men that are like overly coddled by their mothers, or the what we call the devouring mother. Which we'll get into like archetypes, because I know that one of the focuses of your channel is actually stories. And I really think that's cool, because those are very important things that people often overlook. So without getting too personal, would you say you had some mommy issues then?
Yes. We had basically a codependent relationship. And a lot of that was born out of my diagnosis with multiple sclerosis when I was 22, because it was fairly aggressive and I needed a lot of help from her. And so she got divorced from my dad, and my fiance broke up with me. I was 22. And I said, after about a year of staying with my dad, I said, hey, why don't we move in together, Mom? And you can help me, and we'll, be roommates and stuff, and we'll both do the horse business. I know I'm dropping a lot of info on you. Pick apart whatever you'd like after this. and we'll do that. And I lived with her, worked with her, all those sorts of things until she passed when I was 37. 30. Math is not my strong suit.
So you were ill and your mother had to support you, and did that make her like resentful of you then?
No,
is that what
I think, okay. Do you know how, when women, like after they hit the wall and get divorced sort of at the same time, and then suddenly they're like, well, how do I reinvent myself? You know what I mean? And sometimes you see women do this when they're like 36, 37 and they have a baby. Like, I'm not getting movie roles and I'm hitting the wall and nobody likes me because I abused Johnny Depp. So guess what? I have a baby, and that's sort of a reinvention of themselves. And I think it gave her purpose. And it also she had a lot of, I was actually talking about this the other day with somebody. She had a lot of involvement then with horses and my students. She became barn mom. All my students called her mom. And so, like I said, it was very codependent. And I relied on her to help me physically, help me with, doing things around the house. I used to work in the barn until I couldn't walk anymore. And so, yeah.
Well, when men go through that, they just buy themselves a hot rod or try to learn guitar. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's sort of what they used
midlife crisis. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So that's
So someone in the chat is asking, so I might as well let you say this before you can keep going. Sure. What it is a summary of what your channel is about.
Okay. Well, it started out as anti-feminism because it has followed pretty much the, my mindset and my position as it's grown. So it started out as anti-feminism and quickly became pro-men's rights. But at the same time, I happen to be Christian. But I also am not pro what the church says. Yeah, no, especially because they don't like men, they don't like masculinity. They tell all the men, get government married, and if you really love her, you'll sign the contract. And I disagree with all of that.
I don't think that is Christian personally, but
I don't either. What are they doing with the government? It's not the government's business at all. And the laws, the way they treat marriage, it's awful. They've got men in a vice. So I don't really fit in with anyone so that's the channel. I call myself the Little House on the Prairie lady. I look at it like so many people think 1950s was the ideal. No, it wasn't. Not if you were a man. 1950s was soft life for women. It absolutely was not the ideal at all. I don't call that traditional. I'd rather go back to 1850. I am so
like
crazy.
Victorian era, like, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but you still run into chivalry and those sorts of things. So as I, sort of go back in history, looking at the way men have been treated, I keep going further and further back, to try to get where men were actually respected and treated like human beings and not disposable. I think that men should, where I differ from men's rights movement exactly, is that a lot of them think that men should not automatically be expected to protect and provide. And I agree with that. However, the reason I don't think in this day and age they should be expected to protect and provide is because nothing's expected of women. And rather than bring down responsibilities of men, I think women should have responsibilities, duties, and all of that.
Yes. And virtues to pursue. And yeah, because like if you just took away men's, like if you just tried to eliminate men's role, liberate them, as the feminists like to call it, which is what a lot of feminists promote when it comes to men. Well, we want them liberated too. Well, then all you have is a complete population of people who can't do anything except submit to a conquering civilization that is, that isn't doing that to their men and women. So what, because women aren't going to defend men, and like they wouldn't be able to anyway. So like what there's no point in us asking that, but they can do something else. Like they have some other duties, which is really what this comes down to, that they should be fulfilling. But we have almost completely liberated women to the point where they're on all kinds of medication to stay sane because they don't have a purpose.
Exactly. So, that's exactly right. If we liberate men from duties and responsibilities, then we have a full society, and we're getting there. You can see it now. We're getting there to where nobody has any purpose. Nobody has any duties and responsibilities. We do better as humans when we have duties and responsibilities to each other. Like you said,
it's turning into the mouse utopia.
You're
seeing it.
Right.
Like I saw an ad on YouTube for men's like skin cream, and it was like foundation and makeup, and it wasn't like, he was a straight guy, and he had like nail polish, and I was like, there's something about this is really wrong. Like this is really abnormal, right?
It's satanic. And it is satanic because it's the Baphomet. It is the merging of male and female. And then you have Baphomet, which is the satanic, the people in the chat.
Yeah, the satanic trans god. No, these guys know who Baphomet is.
Exactly. And that's where we're going. And if you read Rachel Wilson's book, Occult Feminism, it's great. And
I read it.
It has always been that. If somebody's at my door, I'm going to ignore that. This is my living room. Welcome. So that is... feminism has always been rooted in that. You'll hear women and men all the time be like, well, I think feminism's just gone too far with third wave and fourth wave feminism. I'm like, look, it was a whole tidal wave. And the first wave was bad too. You're just indoctrinated to think it wasn't. So also to further answer the question about what's my channel about, well, I don't want to get anybody demonetized or pull their channel down, but around 1920, I think we made a real big mistake.
Oh, I think I know what you mean. Yeah. And like that's another thing about your channel that I find fascinating because, well, I mean, obviously I agree with it, but very few people. It takes a lot of courage to go there, right? And I mean, we've done it here. But I think that this is the reason why everybody goes, well, I think the first wave, well, in the 1960s, well, patriarchy did exist at this point in time, right? Or whatever. And still there are people that have that cope. And it's like, you're not going to make any change at all until you start recognizing the lie we're living in is very old and it goes all the way back, right?
So true. Oh my gosh, that's so true. People don't realize how far back it goes, but of course it does, because that's how they get you. They do little changes, a little bit at a time, little bit at a time. It's the camel's nose in the tent. It's that whole
Mm-hmm.
thing where the camel's nose is in the tent. You're like, it's all right. That's his nose. Before you know it, whole dang camel's in your tent. And you're like, well, this
Yes.
is the problem. And you're like, no, the problem is when he stuck his nose in. And that was
Mm-hmm.
all the way along. And it's not anti-woman. It is not. I get accused of hating women, and I don't. I happen to be one, and it's not internal misogyny or what have you. I just think that we all have our roles. And I think if anybody hates women, it's them. Because I'm the one saying, let's be who we are. Let's
Well, you can't hate one sex and not have that impact the other sex anyways.
exactly,
Like,
exactly.
mm-hmm.
You have
Mm-hmm.
to understand that we're all, best suited for something. And I happen to think that the woman's real role, what we were intended for, is a wonderful and beautiful thing. It's the people who say you shouldn't do that role. That role's beneath you. They're the ones that have the problem with women, because they have the
Mm-hmm.
problem with the woman's role. They're the ones that think it's beneath the man, because they're the ones that want to be men. They're the ones that want
Yep.
to compete with men and be men. And I'm like, well, if you want to be men, you obviously don't value women.
Yes. Although there is something weird about that, because they don't really, they say they want to be men, but they don't really know what it is to be a man. They only see what they think are benefits. Like,
Oh
for
yeah.
example, they glorify men who come back from war and get a bunch of medals, for example, and they'll say, "Oh, women should be in the military because I also think that they should be getting medals." But what they don't, it's like they don't realize that most of those men come back in boxes.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and
But
men are not looking forward to doing that. Like,
no,
it's
they want
always
the
like,
end result. They want what they think the glory is. They have no idea of the cost. They have no idea. They can't imagine. They want to be, we can't forget the firefighters in Southern California just a little bit back. I'm like, it looks
yes.
like firefighter Barbie to me. It's
Oh yeah, for sure. It's cosplay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And all the female cops that are, you know, getting disarmed,
Yep.
accidentally mistaking their taser for the other one. You're like,
Hmm.
excuse me, that is not. I don't need to go and try to be in those roles that where men are better suited to prove that I'm good enough,
Hmm.
because I'm a woman and I'm going to be a woman. And that's the thing, and these women just completely ignore what we're suited for. They want to say they're strong and independent, and I say, "Oh yeah, well you're not strong enough to be loyal, are you? You're not
Yeah.
strong enough to actually submit to your husband's authority and trust him." That takes strength. It's a quiet strength. It's a very different strength than going off to war. But how about when your husband's in the military, you don't mess around while he's gone? How about you don't alienate the children and move while he's overseas? How about that?
Hmm.
We're clearly we're not strong enough to not file for divorce 70% of the time, or 80 or 90% of the time, depending on the statistic.
Yeah.
So,
I got a Rumble rant I'm going to read out really quick. Thank you to OIC, gave us $1 and said, I will check this out later, but here's a small rumbling dono. So thank you for that. Okay, so back to the stuff you've been doing on your channel. So how would you describe your audience? Are they mostly men? I
yeah.
assume they are. Do you have any women in there? Do you get any feedback from women?
Especially recently. Now, it's not a lot, but recently we've had some women comment. I started doing some lives, and I think for whatever reason that's reaching out to women more. I think it broadens the audience, something. But we have a few women, and I think if women are commenting, there must be a few more. Women are getting more and more curious and supportive of a woman's traditional role, I think, than they have been in decades.
Yeah.
I don't have my hopes up for a turnaround. I think we're too far gone for that. And I still don't think it's safe for men to date, marry, anything like that. I don't think it's safe. But I know that there are still men out there who are hell bent on doing it. And, but the women are starting to question what they've been told. And honestly, let's face it, there's more of this on TikTok. There's more of this on other social media platforms. Also, sorry to like go on a little mini rant, but the men are speaking up. Gen Z men, there are a lot of Gen Z men who are absolutely based, and they don't want these 304s. They're not having it. And on shows like the Whatever podcast and other shows like that, men are speaking up about, look, I don't want a chick with a high body count, okay? And women are hearing it. And even though they'll say, I don't need to please man, blah, 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 that's not true. That is not women's nature. We tend to do what it is we think, well, what will get attention from men, what men will like. That's what we do. And the women are paying attention now. And they're realizing, oh, everybody thinks that's gross. So I don't want to be that, especially I think the 15, 16, 17-year-olds, the ones that aren't ruined yet, they're looking and paying attention, and they're like, well, somebody like Ballerina Barbie, that is
Ballerina Ranch? Ballerina, is that what it is? Ballerina Farms.
Ballerina Farms. Yeah. Someone like her getting like millions of followers, women are paying attention to that. And I don't think it's the best thing, like, oh, she's got all these followers, but that is how you get to women's brains. And they start.
I was just going to say, women are more susceptible to peer pressure passively, right? So if they see the tide going a certain way, they're more likely to go along with it. And it's not even really a logical decision. Like, they're not thinking it through and saying, oh, well, this makes sense because it's right. It's like, oh, I don't want to be in the out group. Oh, what? Right. Oh, no. Hold on a second. I'm getting a notice about my Zoom call potentially ending. Am I in the wrong account? What? That is super weird. Yeah, in 10 minutes. So we'll go, and then I'll just call you right back if that happens. So
all right.
Okay. So yeah, I'm sorry. I was logged in on the main Honey Badger radio account, but it looks like let me just tell Allison that she needs to like pay the bill.
Funny. I'm glad.
Is somebody at your door?
Not anymore. I ignored him.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I just told her to pay that bill. So
all right. Sounds good.
Women, I tell you. Okay, but
tell them.
Yeah, speaking of what's going on with your channel and women that are starting to listen, I know that everybody else has seen this. I don't know if you've seen this, but this after the last election. It was while that was going on, leading up to that, the mainstream media was panicking because they were looking at data that suggested that Gen Z men were not going. It's not even that they were going far right; they're going moderately right, but that the women were going far left.
Yes,
and obviously this last election was essentially men versus women. That was how it was framed. That was the way that they did it, right? So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, well, first of all, it was very interesting, politically, socially, and you had the women definitely going harder to the left. I mean, they had, I don't want to, I'm trying not to demonetize your channel, but they had a clinic, like a mobile clinic at the
we're not we don't monetize these videos anyway.
Perfect. So so they had an abortion, like a little abortion trailer at the Democratic National Convention.
Yes,
and that's like an advertisement, and it sort of propagandized women that are like, if you're strong and independent, you'll do this. And so women were pulled to the left, and all the lies. I'm not a big Trumper. It's not like I'm pro-Trump, but it's just the lies they told about him, that he was a rapist and all this other. And so women thought it was it was pro-woman to rebel against him and go left. And the men were like, that's just a bunch of nonsense that they made up. And they were definitely more awake. And so it was masculinity. Masculinity won the day. And you could see the split, especially in Gen Z. But also, and I made this prediction. I'm glad I did it on my channel, but there's proof I said it. So I said, when men start to reject leftism outright and feminism outright and, you know, hoes and all that whole thing, the women are going to say, well, if I want a man and I want a family one day, I better get on board. So some of those women stayed to the right or went to the right, whereas you still had these to the left. However, much like first wave feminism at the turn of the 19th to 20th century, those women are not real lookers. A lot of times they're the ones that are not going to be able to get the highest caliber of man at all. And I think they resent that. And I think you see that today in some of these bull ring, buzzed hair,
danger hair. Yeah. Like
red.
Bright colors like a poison frog. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Big Red from the Red Pill. Yeah.
Oh, yes. The Big Red,
Big Red.
Probably the greatest advocate for what we do ever, because her behavior made like our content possible. So thank you, Big Red.
Yeah, all I had to see was Big Red, and everybody knew who I was talking about. And I think the examples we have today, actually, if you juxtapose them, they're way worse today. I mean, you know, Big Red almost seems mild.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Think about it. They just, because they're just angrier and angrier. And at this point, we're kind of like, okay, go have your tantrum. Bye. And they hate that. The thing they hate the most is being ignored. And the men are ignoring them. They're ignoring them. And so they scream louder and dye their hair more colors and tattoo their faces and all the rest of it. And the men are like, whatever, I'll just be over here. The men realize today, I don't have to pick one of you. I don't have to. Whereas in like 1950 for example, the men thought, well, I got to have a woman. I got to do the right thing. I'm supposed to have a wife. And in this day and age, the men are like, no, I don't. And so the women are not going to get away with behaving the way they behave and treating men the way they treat them and still get what they want. They're not. And that's why they're so mad. And they're trying to say that we're all Andrew Tate, you know, and we're not. I think he might be a psyop, kind of a, you know, controlled opposition to make people think that that's who we are.
He certainly is convenient to the mainstream media. Yeah. He represents, he's almost like a cartoon character, you know.
He's a comic book character. He's Dr. Red Pill or something, you know. That's not
Professor Based.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, that's not really what it is. Nice trying to make us all seem like we're, you know, pro pickup artists and pro men having 50 million women and cheating right and left. I'm like, that's not men. That's not who men are. That's not their hearts. Overall, that's not what they want. But that's very inconvenient for the mainstream and the powers that be. It's very inconvenient for us to talk about who men really are and what a man's heart really is. And that's what they're hiding.
Yeah.
They want men to be these predators and stuff like that. And it's just not true. Are there bad men? Yeah. But there are way more good men. Way more.
Yes.
And we need the good men, or else we're going to be overrun with the other. And we're starting to see that, especially across Europe.
I've always maintained that I think that the reason why this political thing shook out the way it did is that leftism generally is feminine in its like approach to, you know, security and making sure that everybody's taken care of, even if it's unrealistic. And
Yes.
rightism is more masculine. It's more like, you know, want to do what I want to do. And I think that men tend towards that. I remember I had a talk with a libertarian. This is like the saddest thing because he's never got a chance in hell of getting elected, but he was a libertarian man running for prime minister of Canada. This is
Okay.
why I'm saying it's ridiculous.
Okay.
And his name is Tim Moen, and I've talked to him on a few times, and I tried to explain this to him because I was trying to get him to see that libertarianism is impossible because women will never vote for that because they believe that, you know, everybody should be taking care of everybody, right? So this is the way it's going to turn out. And what happened in this last election was men in droves finally said enough.
Right.
That's what it was, because it was mostly men, and not just white men, although the media wants you to think that. It was mostly Latino men and a large number of black men and other men, because it was the men that said we're tired of getting treated like garbage by you people, you know, considered an enemy, and you're reaching into our pockets and you're taking our money and redistributing it to women, right? Because the women are the net benefactors of tax dollars. So they basically made a statement, and that's why things turn out that way.
That's right.
And look, there are people in the chat that are saying that, you know, all sides are feminist. Obviously, that's true, but like there are people in the Republican Party that are still feminist. Is how you would look at it.
Sure. Oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. And they say they're not. Those women actually are the most dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
The Megyn Kelly.
The closeted feminists, right?
Covert feminists.
And there are men on that side too. But when I talk about the right, I'm not talking about Republicans. No, I'm talking about people with yes, I'm talking about the ideology. Yeah. And if you adopt feminist views, then that is by its very nature leftist. Like that's what it is, even if you claim to be something else, because ultimately what you are doing is saying what? We should be redistributing something to women. We should be putting women first. We should be spending tax dollars on women, right? That's not like, that's what I'm saying. So just to clarify that now.
The idea of leftism.
Oh, the meeting has ended. I gotta call you right back. Hold on. Let me see if I can create a new one. And we'll start it. Sorry, guys. Just a moment. Okay, I'm going to invite her. For some reason, this was, there should have been a payment made, and I apologize for how it looks. I'm just going to send her the link again. She'll be right here. Just as this was getting good, you know? All right. So let me just look at your comments while I'm waiting for Erin to get in. I just sent it to her again. I don't know why it's like didn't automatically like do the pay, but she didn't do this. So men are picking alternatives like porn, AI, etc., which is why you're going to see a lot more attempts at censorship and banning all of them, and both the left and the right will support it. Again, when you say the right, are you talking about Republicans? Because I'm on the right and I don't support it. So like, where are you putting me? This is what I'm saying. Like this whole conversation is just twisted because you really want to be able to say nobody advocates for me while I'm sitting here advocating for you. So like, I don't see how that makes sense. All right. I just sent it to her again. Let me see. Working on fixing on my end. No, it's not you. It's not you. All right. Feminism is collectivist by definition. Yes, obviously. And actually Wignats, who would be called like far right, they're collectivists too. They're leftists themselves. Mnemonics gives us $5, thank you, and says everything they paint Andrew Tate with is how women act: sleeping around, cheating, loose sexually rather. Women coded. The worst they imagine of men is just normal for women. Yeah, and well, it's only bad when men do it. When women do it, it's liberation, you see. So, all right. I'm just waiting for her to join. sent her an invite. It sucks that this happened, but it's not my fault. I do my best. All right. You guys are arguing about atheism in the chat. Look, you're not going to change anybody's mind if you do that. Just decide what you are and leave it at that. You don't have to fight everybody. War. Okay. Art4's part of the absurdity and folly of atheist groups is trying to make atheism mean more than in what it literally means. Karen was also guilty of this years ago. Yeah, I mean, Karen's kind of like let that go. She doesn't really talk about that stuff anymore. In fact, I think that it's probably like, to me, the conversation about atheism and theism, I'm not interested in having it because I think that it's just like kind of boring at this point. Like, there are still atheists looking to debate. And the truth is that the most prominent voices in atheism are like the most cringe in terms of their takes, like Sam Harris. Like, the shit that Sam Harris has said is absolutely insane. So, you know, just waiting on Erin. What does she say? It hasn't come through yet. Let me just send it again. I think she didn't see that I sent it, so I'll just send it again. She'll be back here. I may have to go a little bit over the hour, if that's okay with you guys. So she should be here in just a second. But like, this is Allison's fault. I'm just putting it out there. She's the worst thing about Honey Badger Radio. And damn, I thought we moved to Video Ninja. Not everybody knows how to use Video Ninja, Allison. You have to understand that most of the people we have on Fireside Chats are like not tech savvy enough to run Video Ninja. The two flavors of people that want to control things like AI to protect the groups they care about. The anti-prawn types on the left and right. And by left and right, I'm talking about two different flavors of anti-porn. Well, then just say that there are people who are against porn. And they have different excuses for it. I mean, at the end of the day, both of the sides you're talking about are protecting women. You know, and they think male sexuality is disgusting. Like, that's the same. So I don't get the... Hold on. Did Erin get my message? I'm not going to do this right now, Allison. You just got to like figure it out. Waiting on Erin to get back. All right. Great Indoors says, I remember Carl made a video about how feminism is a cult. Well, obviously it is. Trying to hold on. Okay. She's coming. Oh, here she is. Okay. Just a moment.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are. Oh, what? I kind of hear you, but I don't see you yet.
Oh, whoops. Okay. Okay.
Again, you can go to the camera down the video, and yeah, there you go. Okay, good.
It was
all right.
Weird. It was a whole different thing. Anyway.
What? Oh, well, thanks for being patient with me. Like,
thank you.
I guess Allison thought for some reason that I was using a different service for my Fireside Chat guests, and I said no. Zoom is the easiest thing for people to use.
Got it.
Because I have something else, but it's more complex, and I don't use it. So, anyway, welcome back. What were we talking about?
This meeting has been upgraded. What?
Yes, Allison just paid for it. So.
Oh, okay. We were talking about politics.
Yeah.
Leftism. You can't have leftism without feminism. And you can see that.
What? Are you crazy? That's nuts. I have no idea. I could have sworn. What? Okay, no, finish saying that, because I want to add some. I want to ask you something after that that's related. Go ahead. You
can even see that with like the Bolshevik Revolution. And you can see that one of the first things they did was implement no-fault divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And remove marriage and stuff from the church to the state. And people don't often realize that that's feminism. That's giving women a different type of power that opens to leftism. Because like you said, that's how women want to run things. So as soon as you give them the power, they're going to try to run things like it's a kindergarten classroom. You can't do that. Everybody gets a cracker and juice. Timmy, share your cracker. You know what I mean? And you're like, that's just not reality. So that's exactly what you said.
Well, then how is it possible that there are MRAs that are leftists? Do they just not know that they're basically rolling a boulder uphill that's going to roll back down? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Well, okay, let me put it like this. There are people who advocate for men's issues.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it. They could be doing it for a long time. They could have just started, whatever. But they want to keep it completely separate from the, let's say, you know, from the dynamic of the political itself. So it's like, oh, I just want to do this, but I don't want to deal with this, right? And my thing is, you have to deal with it because they're related. Like, there's nothing about what we do that isn't political.
Absolutely.
By its very nature.
No, everything is political. Everything is. And people tend to think, well, politics is like when you go and vote. No, it's how everything is run. It's how we all interact. And so you can't have one thing not affect the other. And what I would say to MRAs who are leftists, I will be generous to them and say, well, everybody is somewhere along the journey. And this is just something they haven't realized yet, because it is just a truth. And you just can't. You can't be a leftist and fight for men, because leftism, to exist, tears men down. Because what you do is you remove men's authority and you put the state there. And that's what you do. So this is the whole thing. Well, I don't believe in the patriarchy, blah, blah, blah. Well, then you don't believe in men, because that is, in my opinion, you've got God, man, woman, child. And those are our roles. And I'm secure enough to know that that doesn't mean I'm worth any less. I think there are some women and some men that don't think of women in that high of a regard. So they can't accept where we are. But patriarchy is not oppression. There's never been a time where the patriarchy has actually oppressed anyone. There are bad people. Genghis Khan was not the patriarchy. He was a bad guy who wanted to, seize power. That's not the patriarchy. The patriarchy protects. The patriarchy takes care. But in order to destroy men and, lie about who they are and how they are, you have to defame the patriarchy. And everyone's got a misconception, in my opinion, about what the patriarchy is.
I think that's on purpose, because when today, if a person hears the word patriarchy, they immediately go to the feminist definition, the feminist interpretation of it, and not something that was basically a system that just worked for most of our time on this earth.
It's basically daddy's in charge. Daddy loves us. Like, if you look at the microcosm, is the nuclear family. That's the father, the mother, the children. And if women, here's the thing, if you get women thinking about, the patriarchy, it's not going to work. If you try to convince them the patriarchy is benevolent, it'll never work. But if you can get them, as long as they don't have serious daddy issues, like, oh, he abandoned me or whatever. If you get them thinking about their dad or their grandpa, and you think, yeah, grandpa, he loves us. He's good to us. He wouldn't let anybody hurt us when we were little kids. That's the patriarchy. That's the patriarchy. That's the microcosm of what the macro is. And you have to personalize this for women. It's the way we think. We think micro. And that's why whenever you watch any kind of discussion with some of these women. They personalize it all the time. Like, oh, I don't do that. And I know Susie over there doesn't do that. It's like, it's not about you, but that's how we think. So in order to reach them, we have to go there and go, hey, but what about your brother? But what about your dad? And then they can go, oh, and then you branch out from there. And pretty soon they go, wait a second. Have I been lied to about who men are? Because if you think about it, yeah, the husbands back in the day were just beating their wives, and they'd come home and just, and that's what women think. They're like, oh, we need to have a divorce because this is what will happen if we don't. I'm like, that is not who men are. What are you talking about? They were never like that. Are there like a handful? Yeah. But that's not overwhelmingly what it was. And if you start to think about your dad, think about your grandpa, think about your great grandpa. Was that going on? Was grandma, complaining about that? No.
Exactly. Yeah. You'd have to basically assume, because like the way that the narrative works is that women today think that men have every generation before the one they're in was terrible for women. So you'd have to think that your mom was going through it and your grandma was going through it even worse and your great grandma was even worse.
Yes.
And it just doesn't add up if you take a moment to think about it, right?
Doesn't. It's all lies about our history. 1984, he who controls the past controls the present. He who controls the present controls the future. That's where we are.
And so you have, speaking of stories like 1984, so you've been more recently doing, I guess they're live streams where you read fairy tales, or maybe you have videos and live.
I actually did it live this past Sunday. I actually did. I've started to do more lives because I've become braver. But yeah, it started out, we read some old like Paul Harvey stuff from the radio. I read, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting who it was by, but an old poem from maybe the 19th century. And then I thought, all this stuff about Disney, this was back when they were in the works with their horrible Snow White monstrosity. It was when
the remake.
Right? And I started to think about how Disney has these fairy tales and women have this like princess mentality that they deserve this and happily ever after and stuff. How a lot it came from us, especially my generation, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. And I thought, I know the Grimm brothers' original fairy tales are very different. I've heard that, but have I read it? No. So I thought, I actually have an old book. It's right there. I actually have an old Grimm Brothers fairy tale book that I came across when I was, getting secondhand furniture. It was there. And I thought, and I read the real Cinderella. And what I learned from the real Cinderella is that the ugly stepsisters, they were ugly in the Disney one, right? They weren't ugly in Grimm Brothers. They were beautiful, but they were not virtuous. Therefore, not desirable, which is very, very different when you think about it. Because in this day and age, we don't talk about virtue or anything like that. And we certainly don't say you're only beautiful if you're virtuous. And if you're not virtuous, you're ugly and undesirable. So the stepsisters were actually very pretty, but the prince wasn't interested in them because of their character.
Right. So they were ugly people inside, right? They had ugly personalities.
Yeah.
Maybe they were entitled. They were just like difficult
to
work with.
They were mean. They were lazy. They were all these things. And I thought to myself from the perspective of, okay, well, what if when I was younger and all these other women, when they were little girls, what if that's the story we had seen? That if you're not virtuous, you're not desirable. How would we have grown up differently? We would have said, I don't want to be like those stepsisters. And the way we looked at it when we were little is, I don't want to be like those stepsisters. They're ugly. I want to be pretty like Cinderella. Well, what if they were all pretty, but Cinderella was virtuous? That would have given us a different desire about who we're going to be. And that
Yeah.
would have changed so much. So after I read that, I thought, all right, guys, I think we know what we have to do. We're going through this whole book. And then what happened was there was a man, I'm going to give him a shout out. There was a man in my chat all the time. And he's been there like since the beginning when I started in 2020. His name is Rojas Carlson. He lives in Norway. Anyway, he knows the fairy tales and he can read them in German. And he said, that's not the same as my book. That's not the same as my book. My book refers to God. My book refers to God in different tales we read. And I said, hold on a second. This is 1930 something. I need the original. I'm all
The book you have is from 1930. Yes.
the old
Yes.
book. I got an old book now. Another guy on my channel sent me it's a newer publication, but it is the ones from 1812 and 1815. And they refer to God, they refer to piousness, they refer to virtue constantly. And women, it is like warnings for men, mother-in-laws, witches. Who are the other ones you got to watch out for? So much truth that if little boys were taught these things, y'all would have grown up knowing what to look for. You would not have grown up thinking that we're sugar and spice and all things nice. And we would have grown up requiring more of our character and understanding that that's what's expected if we want to be beautiful. Every little girl and woman wants to be beautiful. And who decides if a woman is beautiful or not? Who decides? Y'all do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and it's interesting you brought that up because we did for a little while. We were also reading old Grimm's fairy tales as well, and I got the most authentic and oldest versions I could get my hands on Amazon. And we were looking at the stories. I still have the file on my computer. It was interesting because, I knew that they were religious in tone because it was when you're looking at the Brothers Grimm, when you're looking at the any fairy tales from that time, they were going to have either some religious or pagan influence in it, but usually it was religious. It was usually Christian.
Yes, it is.
We read, and I saw it over and over in them, and that because there had to be, virtues. They're either going to come out as Christian or Hellenic or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that because what got me interested in going through those fairy tales was I knew that the new Snow White was coming out.
Yeah.
And I knew based on the interviews that it was going to be completely different than the original. And so I watched the original Snow White, the very first full, feature-length Disney movie.
Right.
And I paid very close attention to what they did in that. And that movie came out in like the 30s, that 37, I believe.
That's right. Yep. Got it.
But so even then it was probably a little bit more modernized compared to what it was originally, how it was originally written.
Yes, it was.
So you can see because how long has it been since you saw the original animated Snow White?
A while, but that was my favorite one. So I know it pretty well. I'm worried if you refer to something that I won't, but I know it pretty well.
No. One of the things that is in it. So what is it about? How do they present Snow White as a character that made her an appealing protagonist in the story? What was it about her that made her great? Do you remember?
Are you talking about the way she looked or the way she behaved?
No, not the way she looked. Obviously she was pretty, but the way, her behavior, her actions, her responses to things, that kind of stuff.
She was gentle. She served the dwarves in exchange for them housing her. She she didn't obey them very well because she listened to the queen. She opened the door for the queen, but I don't remember in the movie if the dwarf said, "Don't open the door for anybody."
I don't remember that exactly either. I think they were worried for her, but she was really innocent and didn't know. But I think, yeah, she was very innocent. So like
sweet, yeah.
Yeah, the thing about it that stood out for me was basically what you said. Like her virtues were her charity, her good nature. So like no matter how hard her life was, she was grateful.
She wasn't, right? Yeah, she wasn't complaining.
No, even when she was like a slave to the queen and she was just like cleaning around, she sang songs, she made the most of it. Yeah. And when she found the dwarves and she said, I have to do this for them in exchange for this, right? So like there was an idea of being of service. And of course the dwarves needed it. And her feminine, she basically brought a feminine touch to the dwarves experience. So it was basically like, it was basically like essentially what it was trying to do was say, okay, what are feminine virtues that we can show, right? And how do we express it? It's not her fighting battles. It's not her leading a revolution. You know, all this like goofy stuff that we see now, this girl boss stuff, is none of that, but it was really impactful.
It really was. And it was a very good example of the feminine and the masculine coming together. With the dwarves represent, they worked really hard, you know? They dug in the mines all day. And, you know.
Well, that's why the place was a mess, because by the time they were done, they were bushed, so they go right to sleep. So like their house fell into, you know, a bit of disrepair.
Of course. Yeah. And they, you know, they couldn't really it's not that men are messy. Men are very organized and clean, but they were exhausted. And I mean, imagine coming home from a mine. It's going to be dirty. And she brought, like you said, feminine. It was more than just clean. It was peaceful.
Yeah.
And she was kind to them. She didn't resent them for being dirty. She didn't nag them. She was grateful through all of the hardships, the things that aren't fair. She was grateful through everything. She was grateful to the huntsman who came to take her heart out. She didn't sit there and, oh my God, I can't believe that evil queen. And you go there and you cut her heart out. She never sought revenge on the queen. She didn't say, guess what?
Well, she didn't even know the queen had poisoned her. No. She was completely clueless about that.
She knew that the queen sent the huntsman to
take
her heart out. She knew that.
Mm-hmm.
She never said to the dwarves, guess what the queen did? Let's go get her. She never said that. She never expected that of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think she ever expected anything from them. She was grateful to them for giving her the opportunity to have a place to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one more thing too is I thought this scene really jumped out at me. She prayed for the dwarves.
Right.
So, like there's a whole and the thing is that in 1937, if you saw something like that, you wouldn't think anything of it because that was so normal. But today you're like, oh shit, like pardon my French.
No,
she prayed for the dwarves. And what I wanted to bring it to, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that when I say that we have lived under a feminist paradigm for longer than anyone has been alive or their parents, like this is very, very old. And so most people don't know they're operating within that paradigm. You can look at the evolution of these Disney movies as a sort of like a microcosm of an example. So you had the Snow White movie, which was their first feature film, 1937. World War II hadn't even started yet. This is how old it is. Right. And they had like subtle Christian themes, and then it moves as more films come out, they move further and further away from the grim fairy tales in little steps. And I'm not even saying that Walt Disney himself knew he was doing that. I don't think he did. I think that they were operating. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking they're operating within the paradigm. But
people in the chat are going to be saying 33rd degree Mason.
I don't know much about
that's all right.
about Walt Disney in that regard, but I will say that people will say that it is only in this recent spate of Disney movies where they've jumped the shark. And what I'm trying to tell you is that this has been going on for much longer. And one of the things I bring up is The Little Mermaid. But all of the stuff from the Silver Age, like the sort of renaissance of Disney, Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, and all that, they were all progressive, like very progressive, right? Like Belle was like smarter than everybody in town. She thought they were all bumpkins and didn't want to be there anymore.
Yep.
And yet Gaston is the guy we're supposed to hate because he, you know what I mean? Like,
reminds me of Titanic.
Yeah.
Cal.
What were you gonna say about Titanic?
Oh, that Rose is the villain.
Yes.
Titanic. It's kind of like Cal. That was her fiance, and he was supposed to be so bad, and we're all supposed to hate him, but there's nothing wrong with him at all.
Yeah.
He was the stand-up guy, and she was the one that was the problem. And I'm just sort of saying, yeah, we're supposed to hate Gaston, and he was a little egotistical, I suppose, but
what was Gaston symbolically though too? See, I think that they were trying to say something about toxic masculinity. That's right. And because what everything it is, like, he's got the best song in the movie, by the way. The best song is the Gaston song. But when you look at all of the things, all the things that he loves are all things that men do. They just exaggerate it, right? Like, oh, eating 4 dozen eggs because he wants to be big. And we're supposed to find that shameful. Like, you know, guys are supposed to like be fit, and there's nothing wrong with eggs. Like, you know,
that's so funny. I never thought about those lyrics. It reminds me how they're trying to say that guys like working out nowadays or whatever
is like right wing,
supremacy or something.
Yes, like, yes.
That's so
Gaston is that like what does he like to do? He likes to hunt. How do you know? Because he decorates everything with antlers. So like, you know, it's all in there. And he is essentially, and here's another thing too that people may not have caught. Gaston's voice is intentionally operatic because older like stories, like for example, do you ever hear of an old cartoon called Mighty Mouse? And he would say, "Here I come to save the day." The way that he sang that, like everybody would sing their lyrics, it was kind of operatic. Gaston's voice was based on that. It was like this kind of stereotypical square-jawed heroic character from like the turn of the century. You know, like the villain ties a lady to the railroad tracks and the guy shows up and saves her. That's the way he talks. That's what Gaston is based on. So it was an attack on masculinity, like in every single facet. And because I don't know if there is a Gaston in the original Beauty and the Beast story. I haven't like looked into it yet.
But we did read a story here recently, a few weeks ago. God, it's escaping me the name of it. But the men in the chat were saying, this is like Beauty and the Beast. This reminds me of Beauty and the Beast. And I don't know what it was based on. And I can't believe I can't remember what the name of it was. But yeah, wow. And
here's another thing too, is that in the original, the original lesson of Beauty and the Beast, it's supposed to be, I'm pretty sure, that Belle, or whoever the main female protagonist is in the story, is supposed to learn to be less shallow and see past, like it's her growth, right? But in the movie, that's not really what happens.
The Beast has to simplify. The Beast has to become gentle.
Yes, she tames him in a way.
She tames him, right.
Yes, right. And this is like, I don't think that's supposed to be the story.
No, it's like, because obviously Gaston was toxic masculinity. So the Beast is kind of that too. And so she's got to tame him, but you know, I'm not a fan of Jordan Peterson, especially not anymore. But back when I thought he was different, he said something to men about you need to learn to be a monster and
no, that's true.
Control it.
But have it under control. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like,
because you all have that inside of you, and it's not something to take away. I think part of that's why men need fathers so much, and why a mother cannot bring a boy into manhood, because we don't understand all of that because we don't have it. You know what I mean? We don't have that capacity for violence like that. We just don't. And I remember Myron from Fresh and Fit, and he does a lot of other things. He said something that blew my mind. He said, women don't understand violence. And I went, that's such a simple statement, but he's right, because we can't. So we don't know
Well,
boundaries and stuff like that. So we tend to think, oh, it's all bad. You can't run a society like that.
Yeah. Also, though, when men and women get violent, it looked really different. And what I mean is, I'm not saying that it's different because men are stronger. I think that men, like, let's say two men get into a fight, okay, at a bar or something. They usually go until one of them submits. Like, it's not like I'm going to kill this man with my bare hands. It's like I'm going to. It's like bucks, you know, like butting heads to see who wins, and then the other one submits, and that's the end of it. Right. But when women get into fights, it's like they're trying to do permanent damage to each other, and I think it's because there isn't the same kind of social, I don't know, like constraints on that. So women go in like they're trying to finish them off. That's why I think, you know, nobody wants to talk about it, but that's why lesbian relationships have like the highest rates of domestic violence. That's right. You know,
we don't have the boundaries on it. We don't have proper boundaries on violence the way men do. We don't learn that growing up. And it's sort of like it's in desperation, and it's all emotion. So there are no boundaries. It's all emotion. And as long as that rage is going, fight's still on. And actually, I was at a baby shower the other day, and the people are very Christian, very conservative. We prayed before the shower started. It was nice. I'd like them to be a little more, but you know. And the mother was telling me, and she's like in her 60s. She was not the mother of the baby, the mother of the lady who's having the baby. Anyway, she said to me, she was watching two boys, and one is very like if something happens, he goes and runs to mommy. The other one, and these are like, one's 8, like 2 years old, the other, like they're little, right? So one like runs to mommy if anything goes down. The other one kind of is not a bully, but more that way, domineering. And the lady said, I just let him work it out. And I didn't let the little one run to me, and I didn't do anything. And what happened was the little sort of, we'll call him the wimpier one, right? The more passive one learned to stand up for himself. And the other one learned to back off and have respect, because the one who knew I can't run to mommy, he stood up for himself. And the one that was more like a bully said, oh crap. And I said to the woman, I said, wow, you just gave them such a lesson. I said, you just saved a whole problem when they're 14 years old and they don't know where the boundary is. Those are who the dangerous men are. The ones that don't learn that.
Absolutely. Like when you look at the low impulse control that happens, where this is what I'm saying, like this is learned from, from your father mostly. So like the Carmelo Anthony incident. Okay. This is a product of a man who is thinking like a woman. So he goes for the fatal blow, right? Because why is it that women start more wars when they're put in positions of power? Why is it queens start more wars? Because they don't see the costs, right? They're not the ones. It's not just that politicians don't go to war. Obviously they don't, although a lot of politicians are veterans, but it's that they don't know what the cost is. So they just use force, right? This is why they're okay with statism as well, because they're like, well, I'm just going to get the resources and redistribute them. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means pointing guns at people who make money, but I don't know what that looks like, so I'm just going to do it. And so like when you get, this is the thing, fatherlessness is it's exacerbating this problem. It's making it to where like boys and girls have lower impulse control. It comes out in boys, it comes out with more violence that is more unrestrained, that is less measured, that is less you know, like controlled, because but the strength and power is still there, but they have the emotions of a woman. And then with the girls, it comes out in, you know, violence as well, where they're like ripping each other's hair out, they're trying to disfigure the other person, essentially destroying their value. And also they're oversexed, and they have babies younger, and they're, you know, teenage moms and all that. And what do we do with that when women do that? We subsidize them. We just give them money and tell them to raise their kids, and then we blame men for not being around.
Right. We reward it, and we blame the men, and no matter what, because it can't be the woman's fault. And it's like, well, if you really loved women, you'd hold them accountable. You'd treat them like they could control themselves. You'd treat them like they have some agency. But when we excuse everything and we don't require anything of them, you're insulting them.
Yeah.
This is why this whole feminism hates women. At the end of the day, it doesn't look like that on its face, but it does. Are we happier? No. Are we doing better? No. And it's gonna get worse. There's gonna be so many women dying alone, childless, relationshipless,
crying in their cars on TikTok.
Yes, absolutely. Crying in their cars, drinking way too much wine, you know, because one of the things we are not the best at is seeing, like you said, like we don't pay the cost for a lot of stuff. At least we haven't in the past. So we make decisions not thinking about what the end cost is. We are so spoiled in that way. And I also think that we're not good at it. We're really just not good at, you know, having foresight. It's not our thing. We are better designed to see the moment when the baby cries right now. You know, someone's sick right now, not future. Men are very good at the planning and the future and the foresight. They're very good at it. It's amazing. It's almost like God made us to be complementary. And when we're doing what we're supposed to do, when women act like women, and we're not right now, because we're told that that's not good enough. We need to be more like men. And that's what feminism says. And that is anti-woman.
Yes, it is. We're running out of time, but I want to ask a couple more questions. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on. And anybody who wants to send any questions to Erin, just go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip to send us a message through the Discord, or you can send a super chat or Rumble rant, and I'll be sure to read it. But we are, you know, this is your last call for that. So, have you gotten any hate on your channel? And if so, where from?
Not a lot, actually. In the beginning, I got chameleon, grifter, all those things.
Oh, yeah.
From the men.
Yeah.
But what I told them was, I understand why you think that, and I'm not going to tell you anything different, because you should not trust me. I am female. You shouldn't just trust me because I say so. And what I told them was, check back in a year, 2 years, 10 years. I will still be here. I will still be saying the same things, and hopefully I'm even more evolved. And that man I spoke about a little earlier, Rojas, he did just that. He saw me in the beginning. He said, she's a chameleon, she's a grifter, forget it. But he checked back in. And now he's there in every video. And so that was the beginning. Now that it's growing a bit more, and I've noticed after I've done the last couple of lives, which, like I said, it's new for me to do it live, had a couple women haters. Just read a comment this morning talking about, you're just jealous because my mom had me when she was 40. Like,
what?
I know.
What is that in reference? Is there context to that? Like,
reference to me saying like women should, you know, be having babies.
Oh, or younger?
Yeah, when we're younger, and we should all have babies, and et cetera, right? That's my opinion. And she just said I was jealous. And I'm like, you know what?
That doesn't make sense.
You ever think of trying to make an argument? Oh, that's, we can't.
No.
So So it's things like that. It's just little things like that. You have internal misogyny, and I'm like, all right, well, prove it.
Well, what's interesting about that is that, like, if her mother had her when she was 40,
Yeah.
she might have some issues, like genetic issues. And if she doesn't, she should probably be extremely grateful that
I thought
that
that
she
too.
lucked out on that. Yeah.
No, my brain went a little darker. I thought, I wonder how Down syndrome baby she aborted before she had you.
Yeah. Well,
That's what my brain thought.
yeah.
I'm like, well, good for her, but that was irresponsible and way to pick out, they always pick out the extreme example to make a point.
Yeah, their anecdote trumps your data,
Why
right?
am I jealous?
Well,
I'm glad
I know somebody.
had a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what's next for you? Do you have any new formats, topics, or projects you're working on?
Well, I am trying to do more lives. That's my goal, is to do more live content. Hopefully to do more interviews like this, to try to, spread the message a little more, just because I have such a unique perspective where I'm Christian, but I'm anti-marriage, not anti-marriage, but
anti-marriage to the state.
By the state, and in this current climate with the laws the way they are, even if you're not government married, still very difficult. And with the culture of women just like, I'm not happy, so whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a unique perspective that I think needs to be out there. And I think that, I don't know, I'm not trying to get too big for my britches, but I think that I can reach some women who are reachable. I think it's very much like The Matrix, the movie. I think some people just can't be woken up.
Yeah, no, for sure.
People can't. It's just a matter of reaching them. And I think I'm developing how to do that, because I was there. I was pre-red pill at one time, and now I'm here. So I know how I got here, and I would like the opportunity to bring other women along, because it's gonna take the women to turn back any of this that we can turn back. We were the catalyst for making this get bad to where it is. And so the men can't fix it. Nobody listens to men. Y'all are toxic and this, that, and the other. The only people that are listened to is women. So it's up to us. It's up to us to defend the men, because they've been silenced. So I want to reach as many women as possible to bring these things to light. That's kind of my goal. So I'm looking for, new ways to do that.
Yeah. So it's interesting you brought that up, because I've talked about this concept comes out of Maoism. It's called black categories.
Yeah.
And men have been put into a black category. That means that just the mere mention or the understanding that a perspective is coming from someone who is male, then people are programmed to automatically turn their brains off, especially if that man is advocating or speaking out for men. So with that in mind, do you think that there is an advantage to being a woman when you're having this conversation?
Absolutely, all day long. Because as soon as the man starts up, immediately he's all these things in their mind. It like triggers something, like somebody who's been hypnotized. And for example, the other day I was at physical therapy, and she asked me, what you got going on this week? And I told her I was going to interview with you. I told her what a honey badger was. And a lot of these people have never, like your normies, have never heard of men's rights. They don't even know men need rights. Like they've been taught, all the baloney. And I gave her examples. I said, like how the family court system always favors the women. And I said this. I said, because, you can say men are trash, but can't say women are trash. Can't say that. And she was like I saw it in her head. So I'm dropping these little pearls of wisdom wherever I can go, that I think it'll just get in their brains a little bit, and they'll go, next time they hear, and they will, if they're a woman, the next time they hear somebody disparage men, say something like that, their brain's going to go, oh yeah, that's really not okay, because we wouldn't want it the other way around.
Yeah, I find more success with men. Women they don't want to hear what I have to say. But if men ask me what I do and I tell them a little bit about it, not even almost every single man I've spoken to has a story.
Yes.
They'll be like, oh, I know a guy. Oh, I went through this. Like, I just went to a funeral service for my oldest friend. He passed away. He had albinism.
Yeah.
And so I known him since I was like 4 years old. So forever. He died, and I went to his funeral because if you have albinism, it comes with lots of complications, and they usually don't live that long. Like he made it to like in his early 50s. Okay. But I went there and I saw a bunch of my old buddies from high school, and I hadn't seen these guys in years. And we sit down and we're talking, and I'm like getting like, hey, what have you guys been up to? And, like, more than half of them are like divorced or separated, and I'm like, oh. And then they ask me, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I talk about men's issues. And like, oh, really? Like what? Oh, divorce, child custody, child support, alimony, like all these issues with marriage. And they were like, only one guy that of those friends is still with his wife. Right. And I was like, hold on to that. Like, so I
don't know. What's his life like? Is he living happy wife?
No, he seems to no, I think that, well, I don't really know. I didn't like go into it too deep, but he's got 3 children. He's been married for 20 years. Yeah. It could simply be he's just doing everything he's told so he doesn't step on any eggshells. I don't know the story. I didn't want to get into it too much. Right. But my point is that when I think that you're right about that. I think that women in the space, and there's been a lot of women talking about this stuff that have like overnight just blown up, like 100,000 subscribers, etc. And I think you're going places. But what I appreciate about your work is that you're willing to say the things that even those women are not willing to say. Yeah. Okay, I'm not naming any names, but I think you guys know.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to do things. I know what to do where I can just get views. I know exactly the type of videos to make where I just get lots of views. Sit there and react to TikTok and be like,
yeah, right.
This is what dating is today. This is not what men want, blah, 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 like over and over and over again. But okay, let's get down to it. Let's really talk about everything. Like you said, leftism, history, culture, everything. I cannot just contain it here. And I will not just do things because of the likes or the views or this and that. I want to do something that's actually meaningful.
Yeah.
I want to have something that really matters. And so, subs have slowed down a little bit for me lately. And, when that happens, you start to go, well, am I not doing it right or am I not? And I said, no, you're just not getting the easy stuff. You're not getting the low-hanging fruit. Because that's not what Far From Eden is. And I won't compromise it. I won't stop talking about God because obviously that's going to limit. Some people are going to be like, oh, and click it off. And that's fine. It's not for you, I guess. Not yet. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
So, yeah, no, that's great. Okay, last question. I'm just checking to see if there's any super chows or super chats. I don't see anything yet, but I don't want to miss anything in case something got under the radar. Okay, so since you started doing this, in what way, if any, do you feel you changed the most?
That is a great question. How have I changed the most? I have become obsessed with the truth. And the more I do it, the hungrier I am for the truth in everything. And I have noticed that everything points to that. No matter what you're doing, no matter what you're searching for, if you're searching for the truth, it presents itself, if that makes sense. And it grabs hold of you and you can't look back. And so I don't know if that was like the answer you were looking for.
No.
Personally, I have I'll just get real personal. Having the MS and being so restricted physically, I have had problems understanding what my meaning and purpose is in life. Like, what is it even for? And I've had very dark times where I've thought, well, maybe I should take the permanent ticket out. And I think I'm actually grateful for those times now, because I know that men are facing those times, and where it's not as bad. Like, I'm not wondering like where my children are. My children don't hate me, or this, that, or the other, rendered homeless because of, child support or whatever. But I've been in that very dark place. And now I'm not. And I want to help give that to others if I can. And so I tell the men, always remember that you don't get your value from what women think of you. And so that has fed purpose to me. And that is a change in my life that is beyond words. So that's how I've changed the most, is that this has given my life purpose and meaning that it really never had before.
Well, I'm really glad you stuck it out, and I assume that it's, like my priest would say, whenever something bad happens to us, whenever we suffer, he says it's suffering is God's mercy, so that we because it could be a lot worse.
Suffering draws us closer to Christ.
Huh?
Suffering draws us closer to Christ.
Yeah. And I think that it's humility that we need the most right now. This is part of one of our biggest struggles, is everyone is struggling with their pride.
Right.
And that the ability to say I was wrong is the hardest thing, right? So with that said, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you, Erin. I hope you had fun on the show.
I did. This was great. I'll be
maybe you'll come back on sometime.
Just let me know whenever. This was fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you for coming on, and thank you guys for watching the Fireside Chat. I look forward to seeing your comments, and I want to thank Erin from Far From Eden for coming on the show. I mean, there's lots of, like I said before, women in the space talking about these things, but they're not going as far as people like us or Far From Eden does. A lot of them are just doing what's easy, right? What makes them money, what gets them clicks. And then they'll also engage in what I call containment of the status quo, hey, we need a little bit of feminism, right. And I'm like, no, it's all gotta go, right? So
get rid of it.
Yeah, it's all gotta go. And the only way is if women take that step. That's what it needs. That's what it requires. So we need women to do it. That's right. We need women to be a part of that. So anyway, thanks guys for coming on the show. We'll definitely have her on again. And if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed in the show today. There are links to all of Erin's places in the description of the video. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.